Okay.
Ghostwriters.
I'll be a writer. We got one chair here for voters. Yeah, and one right here. We got two chairs. Boom, boom. All right, who did I miss? You do something in the arts that I did not name. I know I left out a few things.
Spoken word.
Spoken word. Put your hand up, that's you. Spoken word. All right.
Actors.
All right, I hit that one, but actors, okay, represent. Anybody else that I missed? Musicians themselves. Any instrument. Okay. All right. Well, I said dancing of all kinds. How about the graphic arts?
Yeah.
Okay. Computer, be it hand, you know, whatever, however you get down. Okay. Anybody else? We leave out anybody.
Literature.
You said comedy. I thought about that last week, and I had a hard time fitting that in. So you helped me out with that one, all right? Who else?
Literature.
Literature. Any authors? I did say writers, but I was thinking musically. Authors. Okay. Anybody in here read my first book, The Death of Hip Hop, Marriage, and Morals? Shame on the rest of you. All right, how about the last book that I did, The Art of Christianity? Hands up, you read that one. What? One person? Oh my, everybody out.
That's why we're here, man.
That's why you're here. All right. So we will talk about this whole idea of the Christian in the arts. Some of you guys know that over the last year and some change, some things have been happening that have caused a lot of people to really wonder, can the Christian do that? And not just can, should the Christian do that? Because typically what happens is when somebody, quote unquote, blows up, that kind of becomes the model. Even if you felt like you would never do that, when you see somebody blow up doing it, you're like, maybe I should be doing that. And some of you may not know, my history with Cross Movement over the last 20 years has been helping to bring to fruition the culture that is Christian hip hop. And one of the questions that we always got was, what's the formula? How do you blow up in this thing? And we used to always say there is no formula. There is no formula. But people used to study what we did and try to do the exact same thing and produce a very formulaic result. And you can kind of tell when something is formula basis when something is organic. And so even though things have happened in the last couple of years that challenge, you got a lot of young guys saying, man, is that the new formula? You see people trying it and it looks formulaic. It doesn't look organic. And so you'll hear me talk about some things, talking about Sho Baraka. I mentioned him in the book. Lecrae, I mentioned him in the book. And I'm not picking on any of them because I think there's a lot of great things happening with both of them. And then there are some things that cause concern. And we're going to chop it up together. All right? So feel free. Just because I'm up here doesn't mean that you can't say, hey, well, what if we look at it this way? All right? So I look forward to that kind of stuff. First things first. Here goes our roadmap for the day. We're going to talk about one thing first, and that is just defining what is art. Once we get a good definition of art, we'll take it a step further, and we're going to try to defend that definition. And I think that'll be the simplest thing. All right? Defining it may be tough, defending it easier. Then we're going to dissect it, and then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to divide it into some categories. I had a few guys who've gone through the book who are in the industry. They may actually be at some of the place where some of the rappers in the room, you might be trying to say, how can I get to that level? And a few of these guys who read the book say, yo, I wish we would have had this last thing, dividing the categories, wish we would have had that years ago. That would have saved us a lot of headache. So be patient with me, because it may take a little bit of time to get through defining and defending. By the time we get to dividing, you'll be like, I got it. All right, so just be a little patient. First things first, you guys tell me, what do you think about art? Is art an individual enterprise or is art a corporate enterprise? What would you say?
I'd say individual.
Individual? Can you tell me why?
Art was created before business.
Okay, so when I say corporate, I don't mean corporate in the sense of business. I mean corporate in the sense of something that we do together. Something that we do in community.
Kind of both then.
Kind of both then?
Because like you have that art yourself and that's yours, but at the same time, a lot of people use that art to relate with other people.
Okay. Anybody want to add or challenge to that? Individual or corporate, what you say? Corporate, why?
Because people don't just make up things.
Okay.
Everything is something that it comes from somewhere.
Okay. So Jesus says, who lights a candle and then hides it, right? In the same way, who does art and this is, but nobody can see it, right? We normally do art and we find a way to put it on display. Now, you may think of some recluses who all they do is paint and they hide everything they paint, but typically we don't do that. If you make art, you want your community to see it. We'll talk about why that is in a second. I do believe that art, though it has an individual feel to it, is how I express myself. Yeah, but you're expressing yourself. The whole idea of expression is you're relating it to other people. So there's got to be something corporate to it. The second you start talking about the corporate nature of it, you get into a very interesting topic, which is culture. You can't talk about art without talking about culture. All right? So for a minute, I want us to talk about culture, dive into it, and then we'll bring art back into the picture. I always say a shared way of life, okay? It's what a group of people get together and do. If I do it, it's not culture. It's just style. But when we begin to do it, that's culture. All right? Here's one way to look at it. A shared way of life, or it's the way a group of people answer life's questions. All right? Seems simplistic, but we're going to see in a second how you can blow this whole thing out. So my first book was based on this principle, and so is the last book on art. The way a group of people answer life's questions. One thing to notice is this. From culture to culture, the ways might change. The answers might change. The questions never do. All right? No matter what culture you go to in the world, you're going to find, hey, they're answering the same questions we are. They just got different answers. That takes some of the pressure off. When you go to a different people group, you sometimes you're scared, like, now I don't know nothing about them. Well, one thing you can know right off the back is they're answering the same questions as me. Just got different answers. All right? So just get that idea of culture in your head. Because soon we're going to ask the question, okay, so when it comes to art, what's the question? What is every culture in the world trying to answer when it comes to art? And the light bulb's going to come on when we get there. All right? But art is one of those cultural questions that we're all trying to answer. If I said art is just one of the cultural questions, what do you think some of the other cultural questions are? So you got art. If you're in the same culture, you probably got the same answers when it comes to art. But what else? If you're in the same culture with somebody, you probably share the same what?
Questions.
Morals. Okay, so that would be values. All right. What else? Same culture, you probably share the same answers to the cultural question of love. So relationships. I'll go with that one. That will go along with values. We'll see how in a minute. What else? Same culture, same what? Probably.
Success.
Think real basic.
Religion.
Money.
That was the first one I had up there was food, right? But y'all said a few of them. So food, what else?
Philosophy.
Philosophy, money. All right. So here goes some of the things that I just looked at. Cultures. Same fashion. All right. Same dialect. We're going to break each of these down before we go with art. Values, big one. Here goes another big one. The same ultimate questions. I'll tell you what that means in a second. Then same heroes. So for instance, when I was younger, one of my favorite lines was Public Enemy. Some of y'all don't even remember Public Enemy. If y'all do, y'all remember Flavor Flav. But y'all remember Chuck D. Right? Flavor Flav was the joke of the group, and it's a shame that we remember him. But Chuck D, the serious one, he had a line in one of his songs that made me sit up and look at my culture for the first time objectively. He said, that's right, because I'm black and I'm proud and I'm hyped because I'm amped. Most of my heroes don't appear on no stand. So I caught the little inside rhyme scheme, you know, heroes appear on no stand. All right, cool. But then I pressed pause. I don't know if y'all remember back in the day, the little Walkmans. Like, when they first came out, you couldn't hit rewind. You had to flip it over and hit fast forward just to get it to the back. Y'all know nothing about that? Yeah. You had to take the tape out, flip it over, hit fast forward, and then flip it back over to play which one to hit. So I did that to hear what he said. I said, wait, what's he saying right there? He said, most of my heroes don't appear on no stand. I had two questions. Who are my heroes? And why don't they appear on stamps? That was back before, you know, the days when, like, now we got everybody on a stamp. You know, Miles Davis, whoever you want, they're on a stamp. Back in those days, I said, man, most of my heroes, who are they and why don't they appear on stamps? Well, different culture. And you're going to see in a minute why different cultures have different heroes. It all ties in together. All right, so just real quick, I'm going to ask you guys to do a little survey for yourself. I'm going to ask you to kind of count the cultures. If a culture is simply the way a group of people get together and answer life's questions when it comes to these 8 things, all right, what is your culture? What culture is helping you develop your answers to these questions? All right, so skip past this. If you had to count the cultures, what cultures are affecting your answers to life's questions when it comes to dialect, fashion, language, food, values, ultimate questions? What cultures? Name the cultures that are affecting you and giving you answers.
Urban culture?
Urban culture, okay.
Pop culture.
What's that?
Pop culture.
Pop culture, okay.
Church culture?
Church culture? Did y'all know church is a culture? It has a culture. And different churches have different cultures sometimes?
Academic culture.
Academic culture. Some of us try to run from that one, right? What else?
Street culture.
Street culture. Street culture is different than urban culture.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not arguing.
Your ethnic culture or family culture?
Your ethnic culture or family culture, okay. What else we got?
Fashion.
Well, fashion is one of the issues. Well, no, you know what? Let's say you said a fashion culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there is a fashion culture. Okay. Sports culture. You can go there.
Media.
Culture.
Media. Does media have a culture, or does media just show us the cultures? What do you think?
That's the art. That's the chicken egg.
You say they are a culture in and of themselves. Interesting.
Black culture.
Black culture, white culture,
What about a regional culture?
regional culture. All right. So I just had a few. Y'all hit some of them. You got to read my first book. You'll be surprised how this one right here is still dominating everything. When the wheels came off with hippie culture, it was hard to put the wheels back on, and we struggle to this day. All right? So you see, you don't know it that when you wake up in the morning, you're traveling on all these lanes. Before you make your first decision, you got a bunch of different cultures telling you how to answer life's questions. All right? And it don't stop. This is a culture in and of itself.
Yeah.
You got people who act a totally different way on Facebook than they do when you see them in real life. All right? Okay. So here's the deal. Now that you see, all these cultures here are talking to you about all these. Now, I will, somebody argued one time and said, the hip-hop ain't a real culture. And I didn't give them a lot of credit in saying that, but I know what they were saying. They're saying, if your culture only answers, let me not tell you, you tell me, which ones of these do you think hip-hop answers?
Art.
Art, fashion, dialect. Right? So probably the one thing hip-hop has not touched on is food. That's not true. Is there hip-hop food? Don't say 2 wings and 5 rice. That ain't.
First said this hip hop talk about food.
Not talk about, does it give you?
Yes, because KJ52 did Mountain Dew.
I needed that. We used to be with Lupe.
Gemini?
He got the joint about weight and food and how that affects you.
Okay. But he's still warning you about food as opposed to telling you this is the kind of food that we eat here. All right. So when it comes to all these, hip-hop has given us answers on. So my guy was saying hip-hop ain't a bona fide culture. What I was saying to him is, only reason why you're saying it is because you don't get your answers from that culture. But when you begin to get your answers from a culture, you begin to realize this is a bona fide culture. Now, the less your culture answers these questions, then the more it kind of becomes a subculture. So if you share a bunch of answers with other cultures, then you're kind of subculture. But if you have your own answers here, you become a bona fide culture, okay? So just think about that for a second. I'm going to show you how these tie together. Then we're going to dive into art. All right. I told you that there are 8 areas where we ask questions about life. I'm going to show you the 8 questions now. This will be eye-opening for some. So when it comes to food, question is, what do we eat? How do we prepare it? Serve it, eat it. So sometimes you go to somebody's house, different culture, and y'all all sit around the table, and you're like, okay, where's my plate? And they'll bring out everything on one dish. You'd be like, what's going on? And they'll all go in on the same dish. You're like, wait, what's... And they'll say, oh, I'm sorry. In our culture, this is what we do, right? Different cultures do different things. Why might a culture choose to do that? Why do you think? Tradition, but why? Like, where did it come from? What are they trying to accomplish by doing that?
Family.
Somebody said less dishes.
Like sharing.
Family, that oneness, right?
Yeah.
That oneness, okay? So every culture, now it's funny because in our culture in America, I remember in my generation, there was no, like, we stopped going to the dinner table. You ate your food in front of the TV, and when you were done, you were done. But that's culture. That's become part of culture. And I think we see the effects of that. Fashion. Check this one out. How to cover the body and protect it from adverse elements, wind, rain, snow, and unauthorized eyes. All right? So that's what fashion helps us do. Every culture is trying to answer this question for themselves. All right? Dialect. There goes a good one. How do we make communication easier for those in our group while keeping outsiders at bay? That's the reason why hip-hop slang changes so much. When somebody from outside the culture starts using it, when a parent starts using it, we're like, oh, time to switch it up. You just take a chill pill, guys. Chill pill? You're not in the culture, right? The way you use the term tells us that you're not in the culture. That's why we switch up the dialect. It helps us identify who's in and who's out. We're going to talk about this one in a minute. Art. What ideas, events, and emotions are worth reproducing? And then the secondary question, how skillfully or how uniquely can someone do it? That's what artists are trying to do. It's not just, look, I painted a cat. You're answering the question, what's worth reproducing and how skillfully or uniquely can you do it? We'll come back to that. Values. Preserve, perpetuate, and progress our way of life. All right? Ultimate questions are, what's our origin, our destiny, and our meaning? Start, finish, why are we here right now? Every culture is trying to answer these questions. The heroes of any culture are the people who, living or dead, helped us get these answers. Think of any cultural hero and tell me, why are they famous? They answer one of these questions for us. And then our holidays, our historic events. When did our heroes answer these questions? That's a culture in a nutshell. All right, at least that's the way I see culture in a nutshell from what I've observed.
I have a question. Would you say that fashion is also not really just a covering or protection, but an expression, a place of showing what class you're in?
Definitely. Well, you know what? What I was going to do next was show you how what people do is they link these. So based on your values, that will tell you how you're going to use fashion or food or art. So if you value that class structure, you will express it through fashion. But what you do is, and it's a shame, I was just in Australia and working with Aboriginals out there, and what you see is sometimes somebody can come into another person's culture and you can detach the values from the other elements of culture and watch their culture unravel at the seams. That's sort of what happened with hip-hop. Is once you take out the fact that we're trying to do this, then our art can become whatever. If I'm not also trying to answer this while I'm trying to answer this, anything can be worth reproducing. So we'll get there in a second. We're going in now. So Acts 17 says this. Culture is God's idea. We didn't come up with it like, look, God, look what we created. Isn't this cool? Culture was God's idea. God said from one man, God made all the peoples of the earth. And didn't just make all the peoples. He decided when and where they would live. Why? Only so that being placed at the different points on the earth and at different points in time, that would cause each person to do something very important. Seek for God and perhaps find him, even though he's not far from each of us. There's something about when and where God placed you that God knew it was going to cause you to grope, seek, search for him. Yeah, culture is giving you all these answers, and something's going to cause you to say, but there's something my culture is not answering for me. And it's going to cause you to look outside of that and perhaps find God, though he's not far from any one of us. So where and when you are is God's design. The culture you were raised in is God's design. What the church has done a bad job of doing is going into somebody else's culture and making them think that their whole culture was wrong. As opposed to helping them understand, excuse me, I appreciate your cultural answers, but are there any answers that your culture is giving you that don't seem to fit? Because maybe there's something outside of your culture. And I was saying this when I was in Australia. We think a lot of times when you travel the world, the sad thing about European domination and occupation and imperialization of the world is a lot of times they brought Christianity along with them. And when you look at the world, it almost makes you think, just to be real, it almost makes you think that Europeans were the only people who didn't have to step outside of their culture to find answers to the ultimate questions. Because when you think Christianity, a lot of times you think European, you think white. But it would be very helpful for a lot of people around the world to realize that even Europeans had to step outside of their culture to find answers to the ultimate questions. Here's the crazy thing. Even Jews had to step outside of their culture. Matter of fact, Christ had to invade their culture because within their culture, they couldn't get to that ultimate answer. Their culture had to be invaded from the outside. There's no culture on the earth that had all the answers and didn't need God to step into it.
That's good.
Sometimes, I'm just being real, like foreign missions will be helped when people understand we all had to get the answer to the ultimate questions outside of our culture. Jesus Christ had to step into our culture. That's what hip-hop, that's what Christian hip-hop represents. He stepped into our culture. So here's the thing. Let me go ahead. It's the last thing I'm going to say about culture, then we'll dive into art. What I've witnessed over the last 20 years is this. Anytime somebody comes back to their culture with new answers to, be it food, fashion, dialect, art, if they have new answers and the culture embraces it, that person becomes a cultural hero. The reason why McDonald's and Burger King are cultural heroes is because they answer the question about food most consistently for us all. They're our cultural heroes. Now, because they detach values from their answer, we see how poor their answers really are. But they're still our heroes. Imagine if you could attach values to your answer. That's what the Christian hip-hopper has been. Somebody who steps into the culture and says, hey y'all, I know we share the same fashion, same dialect, but I got new answers to the question of these ultimate questions right here. And dudes like Lecrae, dudes like Jason had become cultural heroes because they brought the culture new answers. Some people remember the date when they heard Heaven's Mentality, when they heard Real Talk, when they heard Growing Pains. That is a historic date for some people because you brought new answers to my culture. Every artist has a chance to be a hero in that respect. When what you guys create, you take it back to your culture, and then it's not for you to be a hero. It's for your culture to get answers. And then you point them to the one who gave you the answers. All right, so now we're going to talk about art. The reason why hip-hop looks the way it looks is because we've detached values. I'm trying to answer the question of what's worth reproducing. My definition of art is simple. Primarily, it's an attempt to answer that cultural question. And then secondarily, it's an individual response to the question of how uniquely, how skillfully a person can do it. What we get hung up in is the second part of this and not the first part. And I'll share this a little bit later, kind of a preview. Part of the problem with Christian art, the reason why it comes across as corny, is because we're so intent in answering the first question that sometimes we pay little attention to the second. Is that true? Yeah. But I mean, we give each other credit for it, but man, you did answer the first question. You found a worthy subject matter to reproduce. But man, how skillfully, how uniquely did you do? I've heard that a million times already. How skillfully did you do it? And so art is not one of these, it's both. Why a lot of non-Christian art sucks to the Christian is because even though you do a good job with the second part, man, you didn't find a worthy subject matter. The thing you reproduce, the thing you're talking about in that song, that ought not be reproduced. The Bible talks about those who are still slaves to the sin. It says they glory in their shame. The things that they should be ashamed of, they glorify. It's hard to call it art. You didn't find a worthy subject matter. So your task, should you choose to receive it, is both. Is both. So we're going to dive into this whole idea of art right now, and I want to defend it. I want to defend why I think we're like this. Why is it that we're searching for worthy subject matter? And here's what I suggest to you. It's not just that you were made to be creative. It's not just that you were made to be an artist. That's not why you are the way you are. You're just made to be artistic. Think about this. You yourself are a work of art. Now that sounds flowery and Hallmark cardish, but I don't mean it in that sense. I mean it in the most literal sense. You are a work of art, based on this definition here. Art is simply an answer to the question of what's worth reproducing. God said, let us make man in our likeness and our image. So God really is the highest artist you know of. Because God said, if I wanted to find a worthy subject to reproduce, what would it be? Myself. So when God made man in his likeness and in his image, he was the first artist. You are a divine work of art. There is no subject matter that could have been higher to base you on than God himself. God based your existence on his existence. He is the highest artist. You are the highest work of art. That's worship worthy, right? Yeah. But you don't worship the art, you worship the artist. So, if this is what we're doing, all we are is, I'm artistic because he's artistic. I really can't go out and try to find, well, let me not say that because I don't want to get too far. But it's tough to go out and try to find worthy subject matters outside of God himself. That's why some art will pale in comparison, because it's not representing him. All right? So we're going to talk about how the Christian gets involved in this art. If art is the imitation of the highest subject matter, I think sometimes in the urban setting at least, there's going to be a bit of a struggle, because we're all trying to find things to reproduce. I remember the first time I saw Boys in the Hood. I was a boy in the hood. I was a young boy. About maybe 15 years before that was Scarface. Something similar about these two movies. Not just the violence, even though they're both violent. Do you know how embraced these two movies were in the urban arena? It was about maybe 6 months ago where Al Pacino actually thanked the hip-hop community. It was a little bit longer, maybe about a year. He thanked the hip-hop community because he said, without them, I don't think Scarface, that legacy, that movie, would have had the kind of longevity it's had. Was it a good movie artistically?
Debatable.
But based on what we're saying right now, it's like, it was exciting to watch. But he says because of the hip-hop community, not only was it good for back then, it's had longevity. But why did hip-hop enjoy this movie? See, sometimes we think about art. If art is I'm answering the question, what's worth reproducing? You look at a movie like this and say, man, was that movie really worth reproducing? Was Boys in the Hood really was that lifestyle really worth reproducing? Sometimes there's something called inverted art. Well, I call it inverted art. Inverted art is, I'm going to show you what's reproducing, not by showing it to you, but by showing you everything but it. I'm going to paint a whole portrait and leave out the one thing that's really worth reproducing so that you can miss it. So you can say, where is it? That's the answer to the question, what's worth reproducing, that thing that's missing. So you look at a dilapidated project building, you say, that's art, somebody painted, why would you paint a picture of that? maybe it's not the building itself that's the art. Maybe the question is, what's missing in that photo? The compassion, the charity, the hope. How could that remind you of hope? Because it's missing so badly. It speaks, its silence is so loud, it speaks. So sometimes when you're creating art, you don't have to be stuck in this mindset of, I've got to paint a cross, it's Christian art. Sometimes you can paint what's missing. That's inverted art. At the end of this movie, Ice Cube said a line. Y'all remember the famous line, right? He said, yo, I was watching the news last night. They talked about this situation. They talked about that situation. He said, yo, but Trey's murdered. Was it Trey that got murdered? I think it was Trey. Ricky's murder. He said he talked about this, that. He said, but Ricky's murder, they ain't mentioned that. Matter of fact, he said they ain't mentioned nothing that goes on down here. And then his famous line was, what? Either they don't know, they don't show, or don't care about what goes on in the hood. The whole point of this movie was inverted art. I'm going to show you what's missing. I'm going to show you the concern for what happens in South Central LA. The lack of that concern. I'm going to show you that. And that's what he tried to do. Inverted art. But what happened in the hood was, because we were so starved of seeing people that look like us relatably on a screen, we missed his inverted art. We didn't care about what he didn't show. All we cared about was what he showed. Yo, you saw that chrome 9 Doughboy had? Yo, you saw the wheels on it? And before you know it, the message we got is, okay, so what's worth reproducing is people who look like me who act like that. We missed the inverted message. Scarface, same thing, right? The message there is, man, in the end, his life wasn't really worth living. Look at how he died. It was inverted art. They wanted you to say, it's not worth it in the end. Crime doesn't really pay. What message did you get from Scarface? Say hello to my little friend. Right? So, what I'm saying is, for the Christian artist, you've got a variety of ways you can approach your art. But you gotta know, even if you try to get creative, you say, I'm going to invert it. I'm going to show them what's worth reproducing by not putting it in there. It's going to be missing so loud that they're going to scream for it. It's very possible for people to miss your answer to the question. So you've got to be careful in inverting your art. You've got to be careful in your creativity. By the time they got this far, I think maybe about 6 or 7 years had passed when this came out. It was like 3 or 4. 3 or 4 years? And so by the time they got this far, even if he was trying to invert his art, because the same thing happened at the end, but by that time it was like, nah, I know you're saying this isn't the life that's worth living, but you made it look so good, everybody wanted to be O-Dog. You were supposed to not want to be him by the end of the movie. Dudes started twisting their hair up and all kinds of stuff like, I'm going to be O-Dog. So you got to watch what you're hiding from people, because you may hide it so well that they can't get the answer to the question anymore. So, we know that you're a work of art. Genesis 1:26, God said, let me make man in our image. You're going to go out and be creative like your creator to answer this question. Check this out. I just put this up there because I don't think we're going to have time to go through it. But let's talk about this. All right, let's talk about this. We move to this dissecting art. Christian art versus a Christian's art. If someone would have told you that there was a distinction between the two, what would you have said?
Yes.
Yes? Who says nah, not really? We all say there's a distinction. Who says I don't even think those terms really apply? I had a few people who said, I don't think there's a such thing as Christian art. Art is just art. Nobody in here? Wow, that's rare. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't have flashed. I should just let y'all reveal y'all cards first. I'll tell you my cards now, nobody wants to say it. Okay, so I'll put it back up. So let's talk about this. I said a Christian's art, it's produced by a Christian. That's basically what it is, art produced by a Christian. All right? What do y'all think about this one? Christian art can be produced by Christians and non-Christians alike. What do you think about that? True. Okay. Anybody disagree with that? A non-Christian cannot paint Christian art. Anybody say that? Sistine Chapel, so you know about the Sistine
I
Chapel.
think it might be helpful to define the two terms.
Define a Christian's
Some
art
people, a Christian's art and
Christian art.
Yeah.
Okay, so here goes a good way to define it. Brace your eyes. All right. Specifically Christian functions. I say Christian art is art that accomplishes specifically Christian functions. So here goes a list of them. All right. I know it's kind of small, but there's a lot. You're called to do a lot as a Christian. All right. Anytime your art accomplishes any of these, the art in and of itself gets the title of Christian. Now, does it have to? I covered that last time. It doesn't have to, but it fits. That's the point about the title. The point about the title is not you have to wear it. The point about the title is does it fit? Okay, so this is Christian art it accomplishes any of these. All right, whereas a Christian's art doesn't have to. A Christian's, if I paint a picture on this chalkboard up here of me shooting a free throw, that's art, and I'm a Christian. It's a Christian's art. Does it accomplish any of those functions? No. It's a Christian's art. All right. So we covered this. See, a non-Christian can produce something that can accomplish Christian functions. All right.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. So he talked about the Sistine Chapel, right? Sistine Chapel is the church wanted something in its building that when people came in, it would cause them A, to look up, representing that that's where our attention should be, and B, when they look up, to marvel at God as the creator of everything. So when you look up in the Sistine Chapel, you see this tremendous work of art painted by people who we don't know what their faith connection was. Some of them may have been Christian, some of them just may have been paid by the church. So that's an example of a non-Christian can do something, paint something that conveys a Christian message. So, and it's okay if you're struggling seeing it. Like, I still don't think a non-Christian can, but we have examples of non-Christians putting their hands to stuff that had someone not told you that a non-Christian did it, you would be praising God the whole time you're looking at it. Then it would mess it up for you. He painted that. Oh, never mind. I'll take that praise back, God.
Big example, I don't know if you guys seen Superman, but he was born in another world. He came to this world to save all the people on the earth. So that's a Christian example. And we don't know if they were saved who made the new Superman movie.
We're going to get there in a second because, once again, that's metaphorical. And you can get that from that. But if you look at the artist may not have been sending that message at all.
Right.
Same thing happens with, like, well, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, great. So is there any problems, because I wanted to just kind of zoom through this real quick. Any problems with anything up here or questions or comments? I like this one right here. A Christian's art, the subject matter is time sensitive. It has a shelf life. Even if the shelf life is, when Earth is done, his art is done. His art may outlive him, but it won't outlive Earth. Whereas Christian art will still be relevant in eternity. All right? Imagine you have the ability to produce art that we could play in heaven and it'll still be relevant. All right? And this is sort of like what you were saying about Superman. A Christian's art can have several plausible interpretations. You can get the Superman thing. Look at Lion King. How many people try to turn Lion King into Simba is Jesus? And, you can have those different interpretations. But Christian art only has one proper interpretation. You can only get the Christian message from it. And to read it any other way, you're misreading it in terms of what the artist intended. I like this last one right here. If art is simply a cultural question about what's worth reproducing, the Christian's art can be a conversation starter. It can even help advance the conversation. Whereas Christian art is an answer to the question. And that's where I think we end up where we are today right now, where we have a lot of Christians, not a lot, a few noteworthy Christians who are saying, I don't want my art to be about providing answers to the cultural questions. I just want my art to be a conversation starter. I know that we're all asking these questions, but let me ask you guys, why do you think somebody would say, I don't want my art to be about answering the cultural questions. I really just want it to be a conversation starter. Why do you think an artist might say that?
Because their art can possibly not be interpreted correctly, but in a conversation, there's not an actual leeway for, well, like maybe he meant this and maybe he meant that, but in the conversation, it just means you're talking, like you're gonna know what I'm talking about because I'm actually speaking with you.
Okay, now that would make a lot of sense, but when I say conversation starter, the artist isn't really there to go back and forth with the listener.
But somebody is.
Somebody is, okay, so he's kind of setting the stage, throwing up an alley-oop, right? I'm just gonna throw these ideas up there, you get involved in that person's life and have the rest of that conversation. Okay.
Possibly.
Maybe the artist sees himself as a part of a bigger picture, so that somebody else is going to answer that part of the question. I'm just going to start the conversation.
Okay.
Maybe that artist doesn't have the answer, and they can't answer it. There's things they see and they're like, I don't know the complete answer, but
okay.
What I'm talking about.
Now, that would be an acceptable response, I think, if we were not talking about the ultimate questions. The Christian is supplied with answers to the ultimate questions. What is our origin, our destiny, and our meaning? Christian has answers to those. So we're going to talk about like that. I like what you said, but I don't think that that's the Christian's response. To come onto the scene, well, I'll save it. We'll come back to that. Why else? Yes?
I think it can initiate the relationship that you need to have with Christ.
Okay.
It's not with that person, but if it starts the conversation, you can continue that conversation with God and develop the relationship that you need with Him.
Okay. Yeah.
Not to be like the negative side, but because you get more exposure, and because you get less rejection.
From whom?
From people who don't want the answer.
Right.
Well,
I can't say that.
Well, talk to me.
I think you get rejection from the people who know the answer.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
So wait, what are you saying? You're saying if you come on the scene embracing the answers, or if you don't embrace the answers, people who do will reject you if you're not sharing them.
Right.
Okay.
That could happen too. I'm saying it could go both ways.
But
what you're saying it can certainly happen.
Okay.
You'll get more love and appreciation
from people who don't like the Christian answers.
Right.
But then you get rejected
from the church culture.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? From the church. And even from the hip hop culture.
Okay.
Because they may feel like, you know, we keep it real. So you shouldn't bite your tongue just because you may get rejected.
Okay.
It could also be, I can't speak for an artist, but it could also be a response to the culture, because our culture has become so intolerable that they can't tolerate any answers. So in order to even
sort of
speak to the
acquiescing
culture.
to the okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Let me go with Jay real quick, and we'll come right back up.
I think hip-hop may not be causing people to ask those questions. So there was a time where I think the culture would pose those questions, at least even if it was
wrong answers,
conversations to start.
Okay.
And now you look at hip-hop in general, and it's like there is nobody's posing any conversation started. So you may say, I just want to be a dude that comes in and brings those questions to the table that nobody is even thinking to bring anymore.
Okay.
So,
no disrespect, but just like Jason is saying though, before Archibald walked out, he said that the media, somebody even said up here that the media has become a culture within itself now. And I think, Jason, there are people who are posing those questions. We just don't get to hear them because the media won't put them in our face and in our ears.
How about that?
You know what I'm saying?
So there still is a very vibrant conscious rap culture out there. They just don't get the mic.
Right. They don't get the spot.
All right, they don't turn them up on the mic. Okay, yeah.
I think a Christian's art can also contextualize and just form their message for a specific context where it's more relatable for who they're intending the message to be for, and it won't go over their head, as opposed to Christian art. Sometimes if you come in with theological terms for a certain context.
Well, we're not talking about theological terms. We're just talking about you believe you have answers to the cultural questions of where do we come from, where do we go when we die, and why are we here? The ultimate questions. Hip hop is known for telling us how to rock our hats. You know, it was, first we bent the brims, then it was flat brims, then it was fitteds, and it was snapback. It gives us fashion, it gives us dialect. But when it comes to the ultimate questions of values, and then the ultimate ones of, I'm not talking about So I'm gonna stick a pin there and go somewhere else. A lot of times, people will throw up the term theological rap or Jesus in every line to talk about anybody who tries to give answers to the high questions. Even if they're not talking theological jargon, you're still giving the culture answers that questions they didn't ask. And your answer is Jesus. It's one thing if you just had answers, but your answer is Jesus. So we're going to call you too churchy or for the church or that kind of thing. I don't think that that's appropriate. I think that, there's a lot of dudes who I think are skilled in giving answers. And they're not seminarians, they're not any of that stuff. But I hear what you're saying. Let me get one more comment, and then I'm going to try to throw something in.
I say some people make their music conversation starters so they can see what the other people believe, what they think, what they know is true.
Okay.
Versus just giving them straight truth, because if they don't believe it's truth, they're going to reject it anyway.
Think about the art that you produce. Do you think that the art that you produce or the art that you want to produce, is it more the conversation starter? Is it more, I know there's a conversation out there and I just want to advance it a little? Or is it, now I know I got answers and if I don't give them, I'm going to feel some type of way. I'm giving you answers in my art. You don't have to answer out loud, but when it comes to your art, which of those three is it more of? You might feel like you do a good job blending them all. Praise God if you do. It's sort of hard to do that though, because people want to put you in some kind of box. Are you a conversation starter? Are you a conversation advancer? Are you one who answers these questions? And maybe you don't want to be in that box. We'll talk about the boxes in a second. But your art, where do you want your art to be? Think about that for a second. Yeah. So I have these guys up here. So we got Show Barack over here. We got Lecrae, and then we got Jesus. Rocking a crown of thorns. The Passion of Kanye. How could you even allow people to print that?
Dope picture.
The pictorial. So the second part of the art question, right?
Obviously.
No, but somebody might say, no, when I saw it, it was very iconic. The second part of the art question, how uniquely or how, skillfully, very unique. Never seen a dude rocking a crown of thorns like that. Well. But the first part of the art question, is that worth reproducing? No. Right? I had a problem with even the Passion of Kanye West. Like, to allow somebody to print that is just like, oh my God. But there's a reason why I have this up here. I think, so Show did the song, I don't know if you guys can see, this is from the video, We Can Be More, right? I loved that song. I was teaching in the schools in Philadelphia at that time and teaching on character education. And so when that song came out, I played it for the schools, and it was great because it didn't have anything that would make the school say you can't play that here. Right. It was a great, not just conversation starter, but it helped to further the conversation. But at the same time, I did have to acknowledge that this is a very general statement. I don't remember. You guys tell me if you remember the lyrics. Was there anything specifically Christian about his We Can Be More? Or was it just a general plug for marriage? Y'all remember? I know it's a couple years ago. I should have pulled up the lyrics. Right? I don't think there was anything specifically Christian about the We Can Be More. I think it was just a general plug for marriage. I could be wrong.
Now when you say, and this is just me throwing this out there, but whenever you say a general plug of actually marriage, like my mind is going to the origination of marriage.
Of Christian marriage, right.
Yeah, so.
But, I always tell people, do you want Christian marriage or do you just want something the state can sanction? Like, until you ask that question, you really don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And depending on what state you're in, you could be talking about homosexual marriage. Like, it's just a plug for marriage. So that's what I'm asking. So I think, unless I'm wrong, I think that this was a general plug, but it's a general conversation. Right? It's the Christian artist says, or the one who says, yeah, my art's going to be Christian art. She's supplying Christian answers. There was a time, and Show was there now, and don't think that I'm talking about Show behind his back. We've had conversations, and I love his talented 10th album. We good, so I'm not this. But show has moved to, I want to do the more general stuff. All right. Cray has done something that is, I think it puzzled a lot of people at first, and I think now people are just sort of getting to the point where they're just kind of like, oh, I now just accept it. If this is what it's going to be, then I just accept it and I'll support it. Some people see the genius in it. Some people see the danger in it. I see both. But I think we'll talk about this in a minute. Matter of fact, maybe I should come back to this. I'll come back to this. I promise.
Don't forget to come back to 3 things so far.
No, some of the ones I said I'm coming back to, we got to.
We did, okay.
We did. So this is only one left. Only one left. We all gonna come back to this. We all gonna come back to this. I want to dive into dividing art now, because here's where it all comes alive. So y'all see me texting stuff every once in a while. KB, I haven't seen him. He texted me a little while ago. I don't know if he's here or not. He's here? Okay. Oh, he's teaching. Nah, that's what it is. So KB hit me up and he read through the book on art and he was like, yo, I'm really digging the content and the clarity in this. And I'm going to get to the part that really kind of brings the clarity, the things that in the Christian rap world, I wish we would have had this 20 years ago. Like some of the discussions that we're having now, we had those 20 years ago with different people, and they went a different way. But I think that there's a way to kind of take the idea of the Christian and art and divide it up so that it's not so confusing, depending on what you want to do with your art. So I created these categories, all right? A first position, second, third, fourth. So the first position is the person who says, I am going to rock the Christian title and perform specifically Christian functions. When I do my art, I don't mind the Christian title. Matter of fact, I prefer it. And I'm going to be performing specifically Christian functions all the while. First position. Second person says, nah, I ain't dissing, but I think I can do without the title. But watch, I'm still going to perform specifically Christian functions. All right? Y'all know what? Third guy says, I don't want the title. Now, we're talking about Christians here. y'all got me wrong. I'm not saying that a Christian can't take the third position. I'm just clarifying that all of these are Christians who will say this. Oh, wow. So I'm not saying like he's wrong since. But a Christian might say, I don't want the Christian title, and I don't want to have to perform any specifically Christian functions in my art. Now, he's not saying I'm not going to perform any specifically Christian functions in my life. He's saying in my art. Yeah. All right? So you got to ask yourself, will you allow one of your brothers or sisters to do that? All right? I think God will. I think so. But that may be a good conversation. All right? Then the fourth one is, give me the Christian title, but I don't want to have to perform any specifically Christian functions. To me, that is the only problematic one up here. For some people, that's like their mouth is dropping to the floor. Because you think cross movement, and you think we all got a problem with this one right here. Not so. Not so. All right, but I want to run through each of these. All right, so by the time we get done, here's what it's going to look like. Here are all 4 of the categories, and then there's the middle ground. All right, all this is in the book, so we'll talk about it. So here go the drawbacks of option number 1. I got the Christian title, and I perform specifically Christian functions. It advertises the Christian's art to those who might be looking for it. Don't think that it's just Christians looking for Christian art. Anybody who thinks that the Christians have answers, I'm just not ready for them yet, can come to the point where they feel like, dag, I think I do need to hear some Christian answers. So people who are not believers go looking for Christian art all the time. We think only Christians look for Christian art. Not so. But the benefits of having the title, Christian, and the function is that when somebody's looking for it, they can find it. Let me go to the gospel section. I know that's where it is. Right? Another benefit is there's an immediate support base. Because if you call it Christians, 9 times out of 10, the Christians are going to flock to it. Just tell somebody there's a new Christian movie out. You saw what happened to Passion of the Christ. Right? I could go somewhere on that, but I'm not.
Go ahead.
Why is it that when people who have achieved secular success do Christian things, Christians support it more than when just normal Christians do it?
Wow.
So Mel Gibson's doing Passion of the Christ. Lethal Weapon Mel Gibson? Lethal Weapon Mel Gibson. We're going to see that, John. Like, when I'm not going to say he's a non-Christian, but when someone who's achieved secular success does something Christian, for some reason, we flock to it all the more. Or even when one of our own gets a stamp of approval from the secular world, now all of a sudden he's made it, he's validated. I think there's a priority issue there. There's a value issue there that we need to check.
I think that goes in with Craig. As soon as Kendrick Lamar or Big Crit gave him a shout out, a lot of people started talking of him differently than they did before.
Like he made it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Comment though to that, and this is the practical side of it. Unfortunately, most times when something Christian is supported by secular, it has secular money, which means it looks differently. Now, would you agree or not agree?
I think that's the idea.
The pictures, the graphics.
Promoted way differently.
Yeah, there's so much that can be said about this particular topic, especially when it comes to Christian hip hop. Because what was on the verge of happening was, for the first time ever, especially with hip hop, you were about to see something Christ-centered. I hate using the term, but it was happening. Blow up without secular help.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It depends on how you define secular help.
Yeah. Secular help in the sense of it got on the radar without secular airplay. Because secular help is, well, there are normally three things you think about when you think about secular help. It's media, it's radio, it's magazine, it's retail. To get in those places, you've got to be very well known in the secular world, or have somebody in that world vouch for you. To start making noise in retail and radio and magazine without bending to their will is saying something.
Are you talking about church clothes?
I'm talking about pre-church clothes. I'm thinking, so what I'm saying is, it was on the verge of. The trajectory was, if you don't change anything, that's coming. That's what I see. In a lot of ways, it's come, and if you just keep what you're doing, you become a force to be reckoned with. Let me just put it that way. I think Christian hip hop had become a force to be reckoned with. So last year I played the actual clips of people like DJ Sway talking about Christian hip hop, and this is Sway telling Christian hip hop what it needs to do to succeed. Like, why do you care? And I wish I could play the clip now.
What I think is that Christian hip hop shouldn't even concern itself with the mainstream market. Hip hop in general didn't. And when it became popular and self-contained, the mainstream market came to it. So I think Christian hip hop has to do the same thing. Master his craft, master his market. Create its own fan base, its own constituency, and it'll begin to overflow into the mainstream, and the mainstream will come to it. If you're trying to go for mainstream, that's like trying to make a pop record. 9 times out of 10, it's not going to happen. You're going to ruin the core that you set up. Right now, you guys got a great big secret, in a sense. It's not a secret to you, but it's a secret to the rest of the world, and you need to manage it and control that secret, so when the rest of the world comes, you'll have, the power and influence to make sure it's being done right. In regular rap, that's not what happened. We didn't control it. We didn't master our markets, and these corporations came in and basically made it what it is today: divided, shallow, one-dimensional, and put us more. We're at the bottom of the food chain. It's our own creation.
He says, continue to codify your culture, to bring it in, to perfect your craft, and don't sell it out. Stay true to what your core value is. So just imagine him, this is pre-Lecrae anything. This is just Sway talking about what a counterculture like Christian hip hop needs to do. And so what I'm saying is, the stage was set, and then some other things happened. So that's that's a whole other topic. That's a whole other thing. So anyway, so here's another thing. The option number one: give me the title, and I'm gonna perform Christian functions. The third thing is you rep the brand name and you improve the public perception of the product. If you hold the title and you killing it, now people have to change what they think when they think about Christian art.
Yeah.
If you killing it and you let go of the title, well, then that allows people to continue to hold on to their preconceived notions. Because if you blow and you dope and your movie's banging, but you're not calling it Christian because really in your life it ain't Christian, then I can still say the Christian stuff sucks.
Okay, put it clear. You're saying if you're not calling the function Christian, or you're not calling yourself a Christian?
You don't keep the title. Like, not for yourself, the art.
For the art, not yourself.
Because none of this is about, is the artist still a Christian? The artist may still say, I myself am a Christian. They will just say, my art is not. So what I'm saying is for the Christian to say, no, my art is Christian, it helps to improve the perception of Christian art for everyone. Now, we'll talk later, but would you at least agree that that was on the verge of happening? If somebody like a Lecrae would keep the Christian title, it now changes what people have to think about when they think about Christian art overall.
To some degree.
To some degree.
Yeah.
Okay.
To
some degree.
Some people would still say Lecrae sucks.
They might, but I mean, I think they it's almost like at that point you begin to say you're just biased. There's a such thing as bias. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's.
I'm just saying.
I hate using the term hater, but at that point it's like you got. Come on, man. Because even I mean, and this is the thing. Well, never mind. I'm sorry. But then the drawback to this: if you do keep the Christian title, you gotta know it makes your stuff easy to avoid. If you're trying to dodge the Christian message, if you're trying to dodge the Christian answers to the cultural questions, and you come across something that's called Christian art, you know how to dodge it. I just don't go down that aisle. I don't go down that channel. What's that, TBN? Nope, I just block that. Yeah. If you call it Christian, I know how to get away from it. And then you have the misconceptions. Either it's corny, or it must be for Christians because they're calling it Christian. So you gotta decide before you dive into this thing called art. Man, do I want that title? And I wish I could go into what I did last year, but that's chapter 3 of the book. What about that title? Anyway, but you got to decide if these are the benefits of having that title, and these are the drawbacks. Can y'all think of any other benefits or drawbacks? My art has the Christian title, and it performs specifically Christian functions. Any other drawbacks or benefits?
Okay, I can think of benefits because I work in radio. If you give me a CD, or if you give someone at Clear Channel a CD and you say that it's just rap, but it's gospel rap, they feel like, okay, where am I going to play this? What station am I going to play this on? Am I going to play it on the secular station or the gospel station? Because it's a gospel record, like Lecrae or something. It's a gospel record, but you're saying it's not gospel. So they just put it to the side. If it doesn't have a category to be put into, they're like, okay, what station can we play this on? Just put it to the side. So it can hurt it.
But
in that sense.
Okay, so it can help with the Christian stations, but if I'm not pushing it to the Christian stations, doesn't it have its benefit in the other realm?
Not
Take the title off.
necessarily because the content is still Christian.
Because so now you're going somewhere. If the content is still Christian, so then we go to the second option, right? I don't want the title, but I'm going to perform specifically Christian functions. Now, most Christians, even me, to be honest, most Christians want their art right here in the middle. That's what I call the sweet spot. I want to be able to push it as Christian art to the mediums that are open to that. But I also want the ability to not have to push it as Christian art, where that would be a disadvantage. If you can accomplish that, you're in the sweet spot. All right? Some have to greater degrees than others. But then, like you said, the problem is if my content is still Christian, I don't have the title, but I still perform these Christian functions. What happens is at some point people are going to hear it And they're going to label it. I'll talk about this in the book. Why is it that we have to label things? We're that way. And I think we're that way because God's that way. I'll go back to Genesis 1 and show you how God started this whole labeling things. I'm going to separate things for a different purpose, and I'm going to label both of them based on their purpose. Did it with day and night, did it with man and woman, did it with, everything from the beginning. God separated, gave it its purpose, and gave it a name. We do the same thing, right? So I don't know the title, but I want to perform the function. And I'll talk about this. I'm going to give you, I guess, part of the chapter 3 a little bit. I'll call it the blind taste test, right? Blind taste test is, man, you really think you don't like Coke? Oh, you really think, but have you tried Coke in a while? You swear you don't like it? Okay, hold on. I'm going to take the label off, and I'm going to give it to you. Say, yo, you thirsty? Try this. You go like, right? And I'm like, yo, did you like that? Yeah, it was good. Did it quench your thirst? Yeah. You want another one? Can I? You know what that is? What? Coke. Right? The blind taste test gets you to try something that initially you're bent on staying away from. Either you've had bad experiences with it in the past, or you just have these, maybe you've heard things, your man don't like it, it's got a funny aftertaste, whatever. Or maybe you just got these notions where it's not good. Then somebody, through a little bit of trickery, right? They get you to try it without you knowing what it is. You taste it, and you're like, yo, if that's what Coke is, then give me Coke, right? I do think that there is some ingenuity in Christians performing a blind taste test with art. I thought that was sort of the brilliance of what Clay was doing is, let me take the title off and give you the same thing. And then when you realize that you like it, like, that was Christian. Now come get with us. Now here's the problem with the blind taste test. The problem is, if your blind taste test leaves people blind, so that even after they taste it, and they're like, yo, was that Coke? I know what Coke tastes like. You just gave me Coke, didn't you? And your response is, no. No, that ain't Coke. And the only reason why I'm telling you it's not Coke is because I know you don't like it. But you just enjoyed the taste. It's safe now to reveal to you that that's what Coke tastes like. But because I know that you got this towards Coke, I'm not even going to tell you that that was Coke. Even though you're telling me it's Coke now. You're telling me you just gave me Coke, man. You took the label off. I'm not talking about cocaine in case somebody's going to say it. Coca-Cola. I saw some places like Coca-Cola. You gave somebody a blind taste test with Coca-Cola. They ask you, is that Coke? You say, nah. And they now they're trying to convince you it is. And you're like, I work for Coke, but I can just give you Coke. It's like, something's going on here. My encouragement is, I think many more Christians should be doing that blind taste test. But not be afraid at the end to expose what it was that you just gave them. If you just gave them biblical answers to life's questions, you don't have to continue to run it like you didn't get that from the Bible. You don't have to continue to run it like, yeah, I don't know what this is, man, try this. But here's the only bad part. If you are determined to run more blind taste tests with more people, you almost have to keep you have to keep it cloaked. And I think that's the dilemma of somebody like, I don't know. But I think some of the dilemma that people may find themselves in is, if that's how I got people coming to my product table, and I want the dude in the back of the line to make it to the front of the line, but if I tell the dude in the front of the line that this is Jesus, he gonna tell the guy in the back of the line, and he ain't never gonna make it to the front, so I gotta send them away from my table saying, now go find out what I just gave you. They leave, and the next person come up, take this, test this. You like that? Go talk to somebody about what I just gave you. So that more people are coming, but I gotta keep it concealed what it is. I can't tell the guy in the front of the line, that's Jesus, man. He might ruin the taste test for other people. That's sort of the dilemma that people find themselves in. As opposed to, I gotta just trust. I gotta just trust that when I tell this dude that he just experienced God's wisdom. He just experienced God's love. He just experienced God's mind via the Bible, via a representative, via a sold-out Christian. And I'm actually not just giving out these taste tests. I'm calling him to switch his whole diet. I got to trust that the Spirit of God is going to do what the Spirit of God is going to do. It's not on me to continue to rig it so that they don't know what this is. So I think that's the dilemma of Christian art. I don't want the title, but I'm going to perform the function. The second they hear the Christian function, they want to label me. I don't want to get labeled, so I either do one or two things. I either fight against being labeled a Christian, or I begin to cut down the Christian content so they stop labeling me. That's the only logical response to the blind taste test if you want to keep it going. Because once you do it once, the jig is kind of up. You got to go to another country or something where they don't know you yet. Run another blind test. But if you want to keep it going, you got to fight against the title. Or
can I just say though?
Come on.
You can actually do that without doing it with the intent to make money from it.
Oh,
so
good. Yeah.
Some people automatically assume that if I run the blind taste test, and I'm doing it because I can make money off the blind taste test. Yeah. And that's not necessarily always true.
I hope. Like I don't think any of the guys, be it Show, be it Craig, I don't think any of these guys did, if this is what they're doing, I don't think they did it for the dough. I really do think dudes are thinking, how can I get more people to experience Christ? Right? It's not, how can I get more dough? I don't think. So yeah, good point. Right? We're strategizing ways to utilize art for the glory of God, and then we find ourselves in these dilemmas and trying to work ourselves. I painted myself into this corner. Like, I mean, I remember Craig even put out the blog saying, "Yo, y'all think I got into this for the limelight?" He said, "Yo, it's less glorious where I'm at. They don't do the green rooms for me like they used to when I was in the Christian circuit. I go there now when it's, they go to your room, weed smoke and all kind. Like, there's no love in that circuit for what he's doing. So he didn't like trade the whack Christian world for the now they love me. He traded they love me for they tolerate me. To me, you don't do that for dough, you do that for souls. But then you have brothers around you who can come and challenge you and say, but are we losing opportunity to gain ground? And I think that's sort of what's going on these days. So for you yourself, as you decide how you're going to roll forward, just know that this is what you're looking forward to. If I want to do this, no title, but I'm going to do the function, sooner or later you're going to be forced with this option of, but they're starting to label me. What do I do? Do I say, okay, you got me. This is Christian art. Or do I lessen how many Christian functions I perform in my art so they stop labeling me? That's kind of where it is. This is the middle ground right here. Middle ground and metaphor. So I got Shobaraka's album here, Talented 10. Have you guys heard Talented 10? Yeah. I love the album. Awesome. I love the album. There are certain songs that could have been done just as well by a Talib Kweli. There are other songs on there that Talib Kweli could not have done in a million years because he don't have the heart for it. Right. You don't have the eternal perspective for it. But what happens in the middle ground right here is two things. One is common grace. Common grace is, let me just find the areas of life that believers and non-believers can speak on both at the same time and not have to get into anything eternal. Do we want better protection in our neighborhoods? Yes, let's do a song about it. Do we want more men in the homes in our community? Yes, let's do a song about it. Do we want better education? It's common grace areas. Believers and non-believers can care about them both the same. You ain't got to be a Christian for that. Some Christians will say, because I want to be in that, the current conversation, that dialogue, when CNN is looking for somebody to commentate, I want them to be able to call me. Well, I'm going to have to care more about the common grace areas. The Bible says God lets his sun shine on the just and unjust, rain on the just and unjust. They both get what they need to survive. That's common grace. Some Christian artists say, well, that's where my art is going to be. I'm going to focus on the common grace areas. Benefits and drawbacks of it. There's nothing specifically Christian about it. But you do get close enough to have those conversations, spark those relationships. You're there, when the person who's in charge of Sony is trying to figure out, should I sign the next 2 chains? And you're close enough to be able to say, man, you know what? The community don't really need that. I know he's going to make you some money, but whatever. You're close enough. Right? Common grace areas, the only drawbacks of common grace are when you're there, once again, you can sort of get trapped into that being your, I mean, we always talk about not being put in a box. I want to be a Christian artist, I'm going to get put in a box. If you do the common grace style of art, you can get put in a box. And you can then feel trapped in that, because now when you want to start expanding your subject matter and get into something Christian, man, that's outside the common grace box. That's a box too. You act like it's more freeing to just do common grace. That's a box. You can't touch on eternal things from a Christian perspective. That's a box. So don't think you're trading the Christian artist box for something more free. You're just trading your freedoms. You're trading your liberties. So I have this up here for a shameless plug. No, I have it up for a reason. The book series I did, City of Allegory. The middle ground is not just for common grace areas. The middle ground is also for metaphor. It's a middle ground because, okay, I don't have a Christian title, so that's the same, but it's not like I'm not performing any Christian function at all. So I can't be totally over here. You can't put Show's album totally over here, because he does perform some Christian function. You just kind of got to look at it a couple different ways to see, that's Christian. He's not totally over here. Same thing happens when your art is metaphorical. So I have a book series called City of Allegory. Not one religious word in the entire book. But when you read it, it's as if you're reading I don't know how to explain it. It's like, this is the Bible. Not like I wrote the Bible, not blasphemous like that. But like I'm reading, the pages of the Bible are coming alive in a whole new way in the world right here and now. It's all metaphor. Sometimes a Christian can say, I don't want to be here with no title, no function, because if I do the function, they're going to label me. So let me go a little bit further this way and do something that's metaphorical. So I do the Christian function, but you only know it if you know what Christianity is about. If you don't know what Christianity is about, you don't even know I'm doing a Christian function.
Lion, witch, and wardrobe.
Lion, witch, and a wardrobe. Perfect. Perfect. Right? If you don't know, that's the thing about this kind of art. If you want to do the metaphorical, the benefit of it is it's safe. No Christian title and no obvious Christian function, so they won't label you. You can do your blind taste test as much as you want. The drawbacks of it are they could miss it. I know very many people who saw Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe to this day can't tell you what the Christian part of it is. Right? I tried to write City of Allegory so that you get the Christian part of it. You just, you're amazed at how easily you got it. But at the same time, it's metaphorical. Somebody could miss it. But if you're going to do that kind of art, what you got to know is, you've got to know both sides of the metaphor. You can't be a Christian artist who's cloaking your art under a metaphor and you don't know your metaphor. So I say this, I'm giving you the whole book. No, I'm not. Go get the book. But if I say girls are like flowers, and I know the first thing about flowers and not the second and third, fourth, my metaphor is going to be real weak. Girls are like flowers. They're pretty. That's as deep as my metaphor goes. But if I study botany and I get deep on flowers, I can say girls are like flowers. Let me tell you the ways. And I can just start, I can write a whole script on the metaphor. Matter of fact, I can get so dope. I don't even got to say girls are like. I can just